you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jen and the channel is Faith Made Legacy. Today I wanted to get into some stuff that I've been wanting to get into for a while, and I'm going to start with my cocaine addiction. As you guys know, I have a history with addiction with lots of different drugs. Cocaine is my longest addiction, and I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about it and have a little story time. So let's get into it. The first time I ever tried coke, I was 18 years old. I had left home. I lived with my boyfriend at the time, and at this time I was working a regular job, managing a retail store, and he was doing the same. We lived in a small studio apartment in Chicago, and I remember that it was not his first time. We were both 18, but we used to smoke weed already, and he actually asked me if I wanted to try it. And we got a $40 bag, and we sat in our little studio apartment on the hardwood floors in a terrible area of Chicago. And I did a tiny little bit. I remember him telling me before we did it, like, if there's any point during this where you want to stop or where it's too much for you, just let me know and we will. I was a little scared, but I was a very risky person at the time, you know, very impulsive. Several mental health diagnoses and childhood trauma, which usually leads to drug use. And I was just all in. And I remember doing it and feeling amazing, feeling the euphoria. I loved the drip, which everyone talks about, and so many people say they hate so much. I absolutely loved it from day one. And we had a really good time. I remember just telling him, like, over and over, like, I love you so much. And, you know, we were saying that to each other, and that kind of stuff changed later in my years with cocaine, which I'll get into. Something that always strikes me when I think about my first time using cocaine is the movie Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino. At the end, when it's revealed that Al Pacino, his character, is the devil, and I don't remember the entire monologue, but refers to the bliss of your first line of cocaine. The bliss. And I always remembered that. I always thought of that. And I remember we finished that bag. And honestly, as I think back, I'm not even sure if we actually did or not. It really didn't take much, you know. A $40 bag between the two of us. That changed a lot later, in later years in my life, which I'll get into. But I remember, you know, after that, we just went back to our regular lives. It was just like a one-time thing. I was never really a big drinker. So, you know, we just continued to, like, smoke weed here and there. And I remember craving it from that very first time. And thinking about it and thinking about many times, like, asking him, you know, and I did. And I think we did it together maybe about 2 more times. And I remember the third time bringing it up and him just kind of like being like, and being like kind of irritated with me about it. And after that, we went our separate ways. We broke up. And so that was the end of that. And that was the end of my, you know, regular job. As many of you know, I started stripping when I was 18 years old, and continued to do that for 18 years until I was 34 years old and became pregnant. So I went into that line of work, And for many years, I didn't touch cocaine again. I drank a lot in the clubs when I was working. I remember one year when I was 22, I want to say, I was asked to go out for New Year's Eve with a few girls from the club. They were like, you know, money makers at the club, and I, you know, was excited to get involved with them, start making more money, you know, just learning more about the business and hang out with them and whatever. This was in downtown Chicago at the time, so, you know, this is the beginning of where I was, you know, downtown Chicago all the time, you know, always getting club courtesy for being a stripper and working at some of the nicer strip clubs in Chicago before I started traveling and dancing everywhere. And this girl, whose name was Maria, who became my very, very best friend and almost like my sister, my only sister, she, you know, we were drinking champagne and stuff like that, and she pulled out some coke and we did some bumps, and that was the first time that I realized that cocaine sobered me up, which was a really big deal for me because I never liked drinking. I never really liked the feeling of being drunk. I never liked that spinning feeling. I never liked being sick, of course, and it didn't take a lot for me. I was small, very, very small. Not as small as I would later become doing cocaine the way I did. Anyways, I became very close with Maria. She lived in Indiana because she had a daughter out there, and that's where she grew up, but it was right over the border of Chicago. And I always had a place in Chicago. We would travel together. Every time she would come up to work in Chicago, she would always stay with me. Like, we were always together, and we were very, very, very close. I did a lot of coke with Maria. I loved it for a long time. I absolutely loved many things about it. I loved how it felt. I loved that I could do it at work. It would, you know, also set off the drinking, like I said earlier. And honestly, I really, really loved the weight loss, especially for the line of business I was in at this time. I mean, I've always been 5 feet, but I mean, I had to be like eventually down to like 98 pounds from like 120, you know, and I loved that. I loved everything about it. I loved being able to go out and, you know, never having to worry about what I was wearing, always looking good, just period, just everything about it. And I could afford it. I was making my own money. It definitely was not putting me into debt or on the streets. I made very, very good money, and I was able to support my habit. So when I was 23, I first started experiencing, I always had anxiety, as you guys know from this channel, but I really started experiencing intense panic attacks. So, you know, years went on. I continued to use coke. I continued to stay skinny and love the weight loss and everything else about it. And I continued to support my habit. I continued to stay very close with Maria. You know, I continued to party. Gosh, I did cocaine with so many people in Chicago. But it never stayed like that beginning, like I was saying with my boyfriend, where in the beginning it was like, oh my gosh, I love you so much. And we just kept saying that to each other. It got to the point where I didn't want to be like, really like around like dudes or like in a relationship. I definitely wasn't wanting to have sex on it. I was around guys like sometimes, and they would get like a little freaky with it, and that was just always a turn off to me. I mean, I know it's different for everybody, but that was definitely not my thing with it. I really just wanted to like sit there, or, you know, sometimes I would get like creative and like, you know, the stimulant aspect of it. You know, I am a creative person. I do like to write. I did like to write a lot on it, that's for sure. And, you know, I would go through my periods of like talking and having great conversations with people and things like that. And then I would get really quiet. I remember Maria and I always used to call it stuck like Chuck. You know, I found out later that Maria liked to also cook it up and actually smoke, which is crack, like freebase. I mean, if you buy it in rocks, I guess that's crack, but she would cook it and freebase it, you know. And sometimes she would get so shaky that like I would do it for her. And I tried that a couple times, and I found it super annoying. I really liked to snort it more. And so she would do her thing and I would do mine, and we would just go for days. I mean, you know, I've always been able to stay up. I'm diagnosed with bipolar disorder, so I can get manic. I can stay up for a very long time, you know, just in general. So I know a lot of people say, you know, only like a day on cocaine as opposed to like amphetamines, which, as a lot of you know, I have experience with that as well, but I'll get into that later. I was able to stay up for quite a while on coke. I'm not really sure if I look back, maybe 3 days, I'm not sure, but more than the regular person. So Maria and I, we stayed very close. We traveled the country together. We stayed in hotels. Wherever we were, we always found coke. We even went into like projects in Chicago if we needed to, because we were right downtown and they were right near us, into really, really dangerous places where we shouldn't have been. Whatever we needed to do, it was pretty serious during that time. And she had been brutally murdered. So anyways, I'm gonna move on from that subject and talk about that in a separate video, as I'm actually not really ready to talk about that yet, and it's been hard for me to bring out in my real life anyways, to anyone, therapists, anyone. So anyways, point being, staying on topic of my cocaine addiction, after that, I kind of like slept for about a month at another friend of mine's house who just felt really bad for me, knew how close we were. Everybody knew how close we were. And then I attempted to go back to work after about a month at one of the clubs we worked at in Chicago. And it was very difficult for me. I was high, I was using coke, and because I had to, I couldn't get up for like a month, and so I had to get some coke, and I had to go to work, and I was just high, and just everybody was coming up to me and telling me I'm so sorry about what happened to Maria, and sorry you guys, this is really difficult, and you know, her locker was next to mine, like in the locker room at the club and stuff like that, and it was just too much. So I went home after that night of work. I went home early, I believe. I couldn't deal with it, and I called a friend of mine, someone that used to, you know, supply me, and I knew other people as well, and I knew had a lot of drugs, and I told him, is there any way that you can help me make money without having to go back to the club? And the next day he was at my house with an ounce of cocaine and 50 ecstasy pills. Amazing ecstasy pills. This is back in the day in Chicago. I mean, if I'm really thinking about this, let's see, at this point, it's about like 16 years ago. And that's when selling began. And basically, he was at my house every other day with another ounce of cocaine and 50 ecstasy pills. I started using the ecstasy pills, but of course I was using a lot of the cocaine. But I was profiting, and I was obviously making enough to support my habit and not have to go to the strip club at the time, like I said. I didn't want to be around the people that were reminding me of this. I just didn't want to be around people, period. It got to the point too of like, you know, just paranoia, and I was kind of like delusional. I almost don't remember a lot of it. I just, as with a lot of drugs and a lot of addiction, like I didn't even feel like I was like in this world. It's crazy. Well, I met a guy who also was selling for this same person, and I found him to be really, really attractive. And like I mentioned earlier, I didn't really get into relationships or like a lot of, you know, I didn't have like a lot of like sexual innuendos, sexual, you know, contact and stuff like that. But I really fell for him. And he was just beautiful and tall, and he just was protecting me. And actually, I was out of downtown Chicago at this time. I was in a more nicer suburb. I was renting the townhome. It didn't belong to me, but yes. And he basically was just there for me, protecting me. It was, you know, just a crazy time for me. You know, a lot of guns, which in Chicago, you know, I live in Phoenix now, where it's like permission to carry, which after 8 years is still not normal to me to see and everything like that. But Chicago, that was not the case. So, you know, there was just a lot of risks that I was taking, and by the grace of God, I didn't wind up in prison or dead, because pretty much every single person that I was hanging out at that time with did. So 3 months, I think, after I was with this guy, and my timing might be a little off, because my timing in general is off for trauma and addiction and everything else that I've gone through, especially through my years, like in my 20s and 30s. Even in general, when I was a kid, and, you know, there's a lot of reasons. Another thing I'll get into another video too, you know, I've also had some treatments for my depression and stuff like that have messed up my memory. And then also, obviously, the drug use. So I actually think I was with him for about 9 months after Maria's death. And I remember thinking, like, I had always wanted them to meet. They were so much alike. They even kind of, like, looked alike. Both very good-looking people. And both had daughters, you know. Just, yeah. And anyways, he wound up overdosing. I remember that when we used to do like so much coke together, and he would want, I now had started doing ecstasy with it, you know what I mean? And Xanax and all these other things, which I'll do separate videos about. But again, you know, cocaine was my longest addiction, and so I'm just trying to focus on that topic right now. So yeah, he would never do the ecstasy pills with me, and I wasn't there, or he was somewhere else one time, and when he overdosed, I guess he had overdosed on cocaine and ecstasy. So that was pretty rough for me. And for so long I had really hated the coke. Like I didn't like it at all, but it was just what I did and how I stayed thin. And, you know, when I would wake up, I would just do more coke. I mean, I completely have torn up my nose. I've had one surgery on it. I'm going to be facing another one. I'll talk about that too in another video. And I just kept going, and I hated it. It depressed me. It gave me anxiety. And it's just the nature of addiction, just so crazy, you know, habit. I just continued to do it. And I kept saying I was going to stop, you know what I mean? Like, I just kept saying I was going to stop, and I never even really thought about rehab or anything like that. Nobody ever came to me with it. You know, again, I wasn't like on the streets or, you know, hurting for money or food or anything like that. So it was a different situation than a lot of, you know, what you see and what you hear, and, you know, some of the interviews you see like on YouTube channels and stuff like that, you know. So that just wasn't brought up to me, and it's not something I thought about. And basically, I told myself, like, every time after I would go on a binge and sleep and wake up, that was going to be the last time. And, you know, as soon as it was around, or even if I didn't bring it around, like, it would be around, you know. You know, that's the devil, which I later learned. At this time, I really didn't have a relationship with God. So that's, you know, my testimony I haven't told on this channel yet, you know, and stuff like that. Have a lot to talk about with that. But at this time, that's not what the situation was. And one day, I just did quit. I stopped. Shortly after his death. And I went back to dancing, and I continued on from there. And so it was about, let's see, I guess like a 10-year addiction or something like that, you know. And that's something too, like, I think I said that in my video, I'll put it up here, my first meth using dream, about how, you know, I had said something about 7 months for a relapse, but then it was like, I really have to check myself, because us as addicts, like, we really tend to, like, not know. Like, I know my clean dates and things like that, but we tend to, like, not know our actual times and things, or shorten them, you know, of course. So, yeah. I just stopped, and I never used coke again. If I ever used it now, with the difference in my life and being clean off hard drugs and just, you know, everything like that, I don't even know what would happen with me. Like, there's no way. I don't have cravings for it at all. I don't drink now because I don't want to have that risk of, like, even though I never am going to do coke or never want to do coke, I don't want to have that risk of, like, oh, I'm drunk and then it sounds like the best idea in the world to do a bump. So yeah, that is pretty much the end of that. And I just wanted to talk to you guys about that. Again, I have been addicted to many different drugs, all of which I will tell you guys the story of. But that was definitely my longest addiction, and that is pretty much the entire story of it. I hope you guys will subscribe, and I will link my Instagram down below, some other, you know, social media and stuff like that. And if you like my content and you have any comments that you want to comment down below, please go ahead and do that. Please subscribe and hit the little bell next to it so you guys get notified every time I upload and every time I go live. And once again, my name is Jen, and the channel is Faith Made Legacy. Thank you guys so much for watching.